And then then we met at the Chicago Dramatists Guild conference, and then I became a New Jersey regional rep, and I mean, we've been friends kind of ever since.
Yeah, no, and we've kept in touch through the pandemic, having cross-stitching dates and catch-ups. And so I was thrilled when Adam decided to do Stephen's play and when he asked me to do this interview. So Exquisite Potential, the story of parents who, well, a parent who thinks his son is the Messiah. Where did that come from?
A couple different places. When I first wrote the play, my son was, I have to do the math myself. I think he was 1 or 2 years old at the point, and I was a new parent. And the idea just came to me kind of, I think every parent maybe at some point thinks their child is the Messiah in some way, or
or just super special.
Or just super special. And the writing I tend to do is always imagining kind of, well, what if this? And so kind of what if a parent took that to the extreme? And I wove a lot of my own personal experiences into the play, my own doubts of being a parent, which I think a lot of what the play is about is the doubts we have as parents, and are we doing the right thing? Are we providing the right opportunities? There are all these guidebooks and parenting manuals, but until you've actually done it, you can't know, and you're constantly screwing it up. At least I think I am. My son's 14 now. He knock on wood hasn't broken anything, and he's still breathing. So I think I'm doing an okay job at least. But that idea came up with what if a parent thought that their child was even more special than everybody else does, and what do you do with that?
Where does this play fall kind of in your canon? Do you tend to write a lot in this tone of comedy? Was this an earlier play? Where does it fall, and how does it fit into your body of work?
Yeah, I wrote my very first play when I was actually 15. I grew up doing theater and always knowing I wanted to do theater. I actually directed my first play when I was 13. I got a bunch of friends together. I grew up in Los Angeles, and we rented out a theater in Los Angeles and put on a play. And I remember I had to go with my mom to sign the contract because I wasn't allowed to, because I was 13. But I was always very precocious. But I'd always enjoyed writing, but I'd never written a play or really thought about it that much until I was doing a summer high school musical theater program at Carnegie Mellon. And there was a playwriting class, an elective that you could take. And I thought, well, I'll take this. And I wrote, everybody else kind of wrote like a 1 to 2 page little sketch, and I wrote a 1-act play. And it ended up winning the California Young Playwrights competition and being produced at the Old Globe in San Diego through that festival, and winning a bunch of awards. And I kind of went, it
was all downhill from there.
It was all downhill from there. I know, exactly. And so I kind of 15, 16 and beginning of college was constantly trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I was studying acting, I was studying directing, studying writing. My husband and I moved out. We weren't married at the point, but we moved out to Los Angeles, and I back to LA. We were living on the East Coast, and I was going to try doing TV writing, and it was awful. It killed my soul that year, and I stopped writing actually for a good number of years.
But why did it kill your soul? I don't think I know this story.
Now I haven't shared this with you. So the year I was there was 2003 to 2004. And I grew up in LA. I was aware of it. I wasn't, naive about it. I had, some playwriting background. I'd had things produced. And I thought, well, I can actually make money doing this, because as playwrights, we don't usually make a lot of money. And at the time, 6 Feet Under and I think The Sopranos were like the big shows on HBO, and that was kind of it. There's a lot of reality TV going on, and it was a weird time for TV writing, and I was constantly hustling. And at that point, spec scripts, which you write to try to get a TV job were writing sample episodes of pre-existing shows.
Right.
Nowadays, you're actually creating your own new pilot.
Yeah, it's just getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, and but at that point, like I was really good at mimicking voices, and getting the tone of somebody else's voice. But that's kind of what I was doing, and I felt like all that I'm writing is, in a sense, in service of and channeling somebody else's voice, and that and all of the writing I was doing was trying to get a job, and so it became almost desperate. I felt like my writing was becoming desperate, and there was one week where it was between me and one other person to be a writer's assistant on 2 new shows. So I was like up for 2 possible jobs, and it was down to me and somebody else for each of them. And I'm like, I'm going to get one of these. I've got to get one of them. And I didn't get either of them. And again, who knows the real reason? I was told for one of them that I was underqualified because I'd never been a writer's assistant before. And I was told for the other one that I was overqualified. And they said, you're going to get staffed on something. We didn't want to limit you. And I was going, I cannot possibly be both over and underqualified for the exact same job. At that point, I was like, I'm done with writing. I'm tired of this, and I need a break. We moved back to the East Coast, to New Jersey, where we live now. I was teaching, which I still do. I teach, probably for a good 4 years didn't write anything. And then my son was born, and Exquisite Potential is actually the first play.
And we come full circle to my original question.
There you go. I told you, I don't.
You planned that
much. I planned it, and that's kind of where it fits in the canon that way. And it kind of became this new kind of writing, not new kind of writing, but how I felt as a writer and identified.
So what? Okay, so you were going back to your roots as a playwright. And did you then, when did you go to college, and did you go for education?
No, I was a theater major. I went to Northwestern for my freshman year, and I was the only school I really applied to. I got an early decision. I was like, this is the school I want to be at. It ended up not being the right school for me, not the right fit. And I ended up transferring to NYU, which I didn't want to apply to because I thought I wanted a college campus, and I thought I wanted, football games and all that. And I so didn't want that. At NYU, I was able to, I was in Tisch, and the studio that I was in, the way that Tisch works, there's different studios you get placed in. And I was in the Playwrights Horizons Theater Studio. And because there I was able to focus on acting, directing, and writing. I was able to do all of it. And it really fed all the parts of me. And I was acting professionally, I was directing, I was assistant directing on different off-Broadway shows, I was writing, I was kind of doing a little bit of everything. And the teaching actually, I fell into. I was working for an organization called the Children's Creative Writing Campaign, and we did an event at the Professional Performing Arts School in New York. And I met the vice principal at that point, and she said, I was telling her about what I do, and she said, well, would you want to sub for us? Because you kind of be a perfect sub. You can sub pretty much any class we have. And I started subbing, and then they hired me, and I kind of fell in love with it. My mom was a teacher, and I would always play school and, make lesson plans and teach my stuffed animals, as well as do shows with my stuffed animals. So I focused exclusively. I got a BFA in theater. All of the education classes I had were like alternate route things, where once I was hired by the school already, there's different ways to get those education kind of certification things.
Yeah, when I lived in New Jersey, I did alternate route to education as well. In New York, if you teach in a private school, you don't get held to the same standards, like needing to have a master's and all those things. But when I lived in New Jersey, I did substitute teach at Mountain Lake School for the Deaf for a long time through alternate route. So that's kind of cool. So Exquisite Potential then was your first full-length play?
No, it was my first full-length play in kind of part 2 of being a writer. I had written a couple full-length plays when I was younger, and you were asking before about kind of the kind of writing that I do, and it's I've always written humorously or involved humor in the scripts that I do. It's the way I see the world. It's my way of approaching things and talking about things. I feel like um, just kind of my own experiences in my life, I feel like I've had to laugh at things or else I would just be buried by it all. And I think it's a way to approach kind of any situation that we come into. And I think it comforts an audience. It brings an audience together. And it also allows me to talk about some more serious things as well, and kind of in conjunction with the humor.
I feel like myself leaning more into that. I mean, you've read everything I've written pretty much. And so I definitely have been leaning more in that direction. Do you feel like it's harder to write the comedy, or does it come naturally to you?
It's harder for me to write drama. I mean, I always have to write a laugh. It's easier for me, part of just my perspective. I feel the same way about writing kind of straight drama that I do about poetry for myself. I appreciate it. I cannot do it. When I try to write poetry, it's the worst poetry in the world. And when I try to just write drama, it feels very forced and foreign to me. So the humor tends to come a little bit more natural. I mean, punchlines and jokes take work, those sorts of things, but the overall tone tends to be a little bit easier for me.
So let me move ahead then. So I know that Tracy Jones is a very popular play of yours right now. Is there anything you're working on right now that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, I actually just yesterday had my first public reading in over a year of a new
outside.
It was outside, socially distanced. And I have to tell you, I kind of like those muscles were a little bit out of practice. And, for writers, pre-pandemic, we were, I'm so used to being in a room and, oh my gosh, it's a reading. I always sit in the back because I get so nervous. Even still, like I get nauseous whenever anything of mine is read. Even if I've heard it read 5,000-6,000 times, it just makes me nervous. So there was a nice safety the last year in doing Zoom readings because I'm going, okay, I can turn my screen off and no one's watching me or looking at me. But I missed the whole purpose of what theater is, which is us being together and hearing people laugh again.
Did a lot of people come?
They did. There was a nice turnout. It was a really nice turnout. It was in Saugerties, New York. And it was, the actors were socially distanced at tables. They all had microphones so you could hear. People brought chairs and blankets, sat on benches. And this is it was the first time I've heard this play out loud. It's a play that-
Well, tell us about the play.
It's called Un Hombre, which is, and it's about, it's a modern day Gollum play. It's about a recently widowed single mother who is raising her 12-year-old son who's about to have his bar mitzvah. And she's a sculptor and ends up creating a clay man, a golem that comes to life and serves as her son's bar mitzvah tutor and Spanish tutor. It was an idea that I had. Actually, that play, I dreamed that play, which never happens.
I have one dreamed play.
I woke up and I went, that's like a play, which never ever happens for me. And so it was really exciting to put it down on paper and to hear it. And I'm excited to kind of get that play hopefully out there into the world now.
So that's two plays that kind of have Jewish themes. Do you have others? Is that something that creeps into all your plays?
Not always. I have out of kind of the first full-length play I ever wrote was a play called The Book of Daniel, and was about a kid having a bar mitzvah. I mean, I grew up Jewish. I still am Jewish. I went to a Jewish day school, and Judaism has always been a big part of my life, but I don't always write about Jewish themes necessarily, or specifically Jewish themes. I think that Jewish themes are so universal, and so they do end up in pretty much everything I write, whether it's specifically Jewish or not. But I've written a few short plays that have to do with Hanukkah, because there's a lot of Christmas plays. There aren't a lot of Hanukkah plays. I think that I don't want to say there is a Jewish perspective, because that is incredibly limiting, but because of the way that I was raised, because of the world that I grew up in, I tend to look at the world in a Jewish point of view, which for me means asking questions. That's always been kind of the biggest pinpoint for Judaism for me, is that it's a religion about asking questions. There's constantly people saying, well, I don't know if that's what it means. I think it's this. And no, I question that. And, Passover is all about asking questions. And why do we do this? And why is this different? And that's not only my approach to playwriting, it's my approach to life. I feel like we're constantly asking questions, and should be. And
that's what playwrights do, right?
Exactly. And raising those questions for audiences. And so in that respect, everything I write is Jewish. In that respect.
Me too.
Oh, there you go. But I haven't written about a bar mitzvah in quite a while. So
and Michael, having just had his, had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it's actually very funny. My husband and I were talking about how you can kind of track my son's life and development through the plays that I've written. And it was actually fun revisiting Exquisite Potential and remembering things. I'm going, oh my gosh, because I write from life in some ways, and seeing things within the play of going, oh right, that my son did do that, and then I have a later play where there's a kindergartner that turns into a puppet. That is not, my son did not turn into a puppet, but I wrote that probably when he was in kindergarten. So
right.
There's a way to track
That's
things.
funny. I'm sure you can do that with mine as well. Like there's something in there that, are there any Jewish themes that you feel like are underexplored in theater?
Oh, that's a great question.
Because if there are, you need to go write it.
I know. I don't know. There are so many good. I hate calling them Jewish plays because they're, but they're. I can't think of any that are necessarily unexplored. I feel like there's so many great writers out there doing such great work, and there's nothing I can that comes to mind.
Okay, no, that's okay. So I'm sure you, like I, have had so many Zoom box type readings. So this production was not that. What was it like watching kind of a film almost of your play?
It was really, it was exciting to kind of see because I was not part of the rehearsal process for this particular production. And so it was a great surprise to me, to see it on the screen this way. I tend to write for the stage, and so it was interesting to see things captured by a film, to see reactions, and through the editing choices that were made was really exciting to kind of pinpoint certain things. I loved the thing that's been great about things like what JRTR is doing about kind of the streaming that happens is I love that people everywhere have been able to share my work.
Yeah, have you heard from people in other parts of the country?
Yeah, well, my mom, who I think may be watching right now, so hi, Mom. So she's to see everything that I could do. So I know she was able to, but like my aunt who lives in Israel was able to watch this, and something she's never seen any of my work, never been able to, and so. Just being able to reach such a wide audience, not just of my family, but is really exciting. And for audiences, I've been loving watching shows from theater companies that I'd never be able to get to, unless I was in that city visiting a friend or having a show done, and to get to know the work of other theaters and get to know the work of other writers and performers. It's one thing that I really hope stays in some way once we're back kind of to normal.
Ideally, what would you like to see stay and what would you like to see go? Because I think that we're all, kind of burnt out, like keeping up on everybody's readings and all the streamings can be a full-time job. And I kind of have just said no to all of it. lately, with very select exceptions like yours. But it's just been like, I could be watching something every single night, and I could be sitting in a workshop every single afternoon, and it just is crazy. So what do you
It's
think the best benefits are that you would like to see stay, and what would you like to see go away forever?
the best benefits for me, and I think you and I have talked about this in some way, developing a play initially has been great to be able to get actors from all over, to kind of almost do table work in a way, has been that's been a great thing with Zoom. It's, people don't have to travel as much, you save that time. I hope that stays in some ways.
I hope that actually some of the developing opportunities open more opportunity through Zoom. Like, I was on a call with the new executive director of the O'Neill, and she said they were thinking about offering some opportunities to finalists this year, like just maybe like mini things, which, stuff like that I think would be great.
Exactly. So I feel like that is great. I don't need to see or really have another Zoom reading. It's, there's again, Zoom isn't a medium for theater. I mean, I think you can create great things for the platform, but even just people talking on top of each other, even though Zoom's gotten better over the year, there's a delay, there's a lag, and especially for comedy like I write, it's really hard to do on Zoom.
Yeah.
But I if there's some sort of stream, video of a production that can be shared in some way, that the access for that would be great to have, for people. My fear is, and I was actually just having a conversation with somebody the other day about this. My fear is, I don't want people to get so lazy and go, well, I can just watch the stream, I don't need to go in person. And the argument that she came up with, she said, is, well, that's kind of what sports is all the time, right? I mean, there are people that go, you know what, I go to a sporting event because I know what that's like, but I can also watch it on TV if I need to. But the true diehards, it doesn't go away. There's still people paying big prices and clamoring to, go to Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
So, I'm excited and curious about kind of how things progress.
Me too. I think there will be some kind of hybrid model, like the theater that's doing Sons and Lovers in July. I know they are doing it live and streaming, for whatever combination that might end up being by July, but that's been the plan from the beginning. For comedy, especially, I mean, you just need that audience. I mean, I've had readings of comedy and people are writing in the chat, I'm laughing, but it's really not the same as, hearing it. And I actually experimented with people leaving their mics on last time I had a reading of a comedy. And that does help somewhat, just to be able to hear some kind of feedback. But yeah, I'm just dying to, like, my 2 productions that were happening this fall are now pushed to spring of 2022. So it's going to be a while before I see anything of mine on stage, I think. So were you able to write during this time? Like, maybe did you take some time off? Did it take a while to get your groove back? I know teaching has been insane, like in school, out of school, hybriding school, and all kinds of stuff. But how has it affected your writing?
Yeah, it early on in the process, it was I think we all saw early on those, well, Shakespeare wrote King Lear in, the plague. And like, what horrible stress to put on all of us now. Like, we've got to write King Lear now.
Oh, and the other one I keep hearing is, I can't wait to see all the stuff that comes out of this. It's like,
it's, and I allowed myself early on, Austin Kleon, who is a writer and artist that I follow, has a great newsletter, and he had a fantastic post about input versus output, I think, or uploading versus downloading. I can't remember which of the phrases it is now, but basically to allow ourselves to just download, to just input, and not worry about the output. And I think it actually makes us better artists, because then we have things to talk about and we have things to share. If we're only ever throwing stuff out, we're not able to absorb the world. And I this year have watched so much television, so much, but part of it's because there's so much good stuff and there's so many good stories, and it was really lovely to not have the pressure of because even when things open up, there's going to be a big logjam of work. And so even when I'm working on now, while I would love to have a production of everything of mine, I know there's going to be delays. And so to not have the pressure on me was really, it lifted a weight. And I did write Un Hombre in this, in the pandemic, but partially because I took a class and I had to have pages every week. So it was kind of like a personal trainer. It made me show up and write the play. And I'm working on something else new. And it's nice to be writing and kind of go, you know what? I don't know if these plays will be seen anytime soon, but there's stories that I want to tell and I want to share. And that's very freeing. And I feel like has, again, like I said, taken a weight off of kind of having to produce.
What is the best of what you've watched on screen this year? Like what like people are asking you to recommend from your year of heavy screen viewing?
So, oh my gosh. Okay. So,
I mean, pick a TV show, pick a stream production, pick from a couple different areas.
Like Schitt's Creek, it was so good.
Really? Like we made it through the first season and I was like,
so
it gets better.
And just it grows, and the characters. I mean, what Dan Levy does is so brilliant. And because I watched the first couple episodes, I'm like, I don't know, who are these people?
We watched the first season and we heard it gets better, but we haven't been able to get back into it because it
finds its heart, which is kind of always there, but it was one of the best things that we've watched.
All right, we'll go back. We did the same thing with Breaking Bad. We watched like 5 episodes. We're like, this is terrible. And then like season 5, we heard everyone going, oh my God, you have to watch this show. Yeah. So we went back and made it through.
Yeah. Ozark, we watched, we watched so much, but that was kind of a lot of TV. Theater-wise, I've loved watching, the national theater shows, especially kind of early on when it was every week. I think they were producing something different. Getting to see their production of Frankenstein there were 2 different casts. Oh gosh, now I'm on camera having to say this. I always call him Benedict Cumberbatch, even though I know that's not his last name, because I joke about it. Benedict Cumberbatch, is that how to say it? Anyway, and not Tommy Lee Jones. Oh my God, I'm blanking on whatever it is. Now that people are going, I'm an idiot for not knowing this, but they were Frankenstein, who's the doctor, and the monster, and then they flipped. And getting to see that was really kind of amazing. And I was reading the book, Frankenstein at the Point, which also kind of served as an inspiration for Un Hombre. That was amazing to watch. I'm blanking on. There's been so much good stuff that I've watched this year.
Does it make you think again about writing for television?
It does.
Do you wonder if you had stuck with it, or would you have been pushed out in this new,
who knows, but it does make, I play the coulda, shoulda, woulda game a lot. And I've tried not to, if I'd only stayed in LA and who knows, but I also know, everything happens for a reason. And I think I'm more excited by TV that's happening now. And I feel like the stories that I have to tell actually fit better, in not necessarily having to create, that 100 show, you have to hit that mark in order to, get to syndication. That market doesn't exist anymore. And the stories that I'm most drawn to telling aren't necessarily the stories that are, ongoing, this way. So to create a 9 series or 9 episode, 13 episode arc of something is much more appealing to me. And I actually have a couple ideas that I'm toying with right now. So yeah.
If this pandemic shifts anything about the playwriting industry, what would you like to see that be? So
I feel like everything that's happened this last year, in so many ways, has been a very necessary reboot of not only our world, but of our industry, especially. I'm really heartened by the ability, the ability now that when we open back up, to ensure that we have more diverse stories going on. And that is something that I think, when you look at commercial theater like Broadway, it's been the same kinds of people telling the same kinds of stories for the same kinds of audiences. And I'm excited that that will change. I'm hopeful that it will change. And
do you think Broadway will change? Do you think the for-profit sector will change to that degree?
I feel like it has to. I feel like it's got to grow up. I feel like it's always been behind everything else, behind all the other parts of the industry, because of the market, because of the commercial nature of it. But I think also the fact that, a year and a half probably will have gone by without it bringing in its money. I'm hoping, again, I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm hopeful that the streams of how commercial stream and how that works, and the methods and modes of producing will be changing, and that the people that are part of that process are going to look different than they've been looking the last.
I mean, when people talk about diversity and parity, and they trot out the figures, that only, 17% of plays produced are by women. And I always say, if you look at the new play sector, those numbers are much more equitable. But, the new play slot is given to somebody, and everyone's producing the moneymakers, which traditionally have been by white men. The musicals are mostly by white men, the moneymakers, all the canon plays, all of it. And I have always said that until Broadway is not dominated by men, it will not trickle down into the regions.
Exactly.
So I really hope what you're saying is true. I'm a little cynical because, the models are going to take a long time to change. But until that changes, you're never going to see real parity down the line. And I know in Buffalo, I've run the numbers, and it's the same type of thing. I mean, it's getting a little bit better, but when people are drawing mostly from blockbusters and plays that people know and can look up, you're going to see a lot of the same fare until Broadway starts shifting, which, the thing that's really, I think a lot of people don't really recognize about Broadway is that it's self-production at a very high level.
Yeah.
Because it's for profit. So if I had $50 million, I could be on Broadway. It's not a vetted thing. So right. I would love to see Buffalo and other regional communities look off Broadway at the curated seasons and who are they looking at? And maybe Broadway is not really the place we should be drawing from. That's a tough nut to crack, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like it's also, I mean, part of the story is the audiences too. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about with education is getting more students excited about theater, and getting them to realize that their stories deserve to be told as well. I always say that, and this ties in actually to Exquisite Potential and my own belief system.
You're just wrapping it up.
I wasn't trying to do that, but I mean, my feeling as a teacher is my job is to make every student realize how important their voice is, and that I talk to my kids actually every year about this. That's my main job. That's what I feel like all teachers' main jobs are. When I teach the Crucible, I don't really care if 5 years from now they remember, John Proctor. I don't what I care about is that they recognize storytelling, that they recognize their voices, and that my whole belief, and this is kind of the belief in the play as well, is that when every person recognizes their own voice, and it's not just about following somebody else's. That's what will bring about a better world for all of us. That it's about recognizing that every person has something to say, and to listen as well, obviously. But I think so many people, I find this with my students, they're so tentative, they're so afraid to take charge of kind of their own self, and they think, well, what I have to say is not that important, or what I think is maybe kind of stupid or weird or out there. We need that weird, we need that stupid, because that is of worth. And that's, because like you said, before, because we're only tending to hear the same voices over and over.
Well, I was actually going to say, how do you feel like playwrights can assist with this? But then I want you to talk about what you're doing with the Dramatists Guild when on our education committee with the list.
Yeah, sure. So, I feel like, first of all, playwrights, need to be writing. I feel like writers need to be writing all, and recognizing that not writing for kind of the commercial model, because that's one person's vision of what that means, and to write the stories that they want to be writing, and that they're excited about and that they're passionate about, and that it's like, maybe I'm stupid for thinking this, but I'm going to share it, and that's what we need. And what I'm doing as part of the education committee is kind of a twofold thing, where we're trying to develop lists for teachers to look to be teaching more diverse works, so that we're not just teaching The Crucible. We're not, as a great a play as it is, but looking, I think a lot of teachers want to go outside the canon of, dead white European men, or of European descent, so what we're trying to do is to create lists for teachers to look at, and to encourage teachers to, you don't have to be teaching these same plays. Look, here's some, you want to teach about absurdism. You don't have to just do, as wonderful as Ionesco is, there's a lot of really great diverse writers that are writing absurdism.
And they're alive.
And they're alive. And those stories are like this, and I just wrote an article for the Dramatist about my own experience teaching both Mother Courage and Lynn Nottage's Ruined, kind of back to back with each other, and it paid off immediately, because the kids that were kind of going, oh, okay, Brecht, this is kind of interesting, suddenly reading Lynn Nottage's version of Mother Courage, kind of went, oh wait, this is a different way of telling the story, and my voice, I'm not somebody that looks like Bertolt Brecht. I'm maybe somebody that looks more like Lynn Nottage, and my voice, wait, someone can tell my story and teach my story, and that I do believe that when more teachers teach diverse work, we're going to get more diverse art out of it, because people are going to recognize, oh, my story is part of the canon of the world, and that is my hope.
I think it's so important. I mean, I think that theater, the way it's taught in high schools, is not doing kids any favors. They come out of high school very often not even knowing that there are living playwrights,
Yeah.
Who are writing things right now that are contemporary and speaking in their language and telling stories about people who look like them or who are them. And I don't understand why we're locked into that, and why teachers, theater teachers of all people, are not being a little bit more progressive in pushing the envelope. But, you see it in the choices they choose. I mean, I think they're much more open to choosing other things in other parts of the country. I know around here, all the schools just do the same musicals. One school does it, and then they all, oh, I didn't know that musical existed. And then they all do that same musical. I just would like to see them dig a little deeper. There are resources I've offered to people. You want original musicals from playwrights? I can find them for you, but nobody ever takes me up on it. Or plays by women, or never happens. Is there anything else that you have going on that you want to plug right now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned before, I have a play, Tracy Jones, that's is about a woman named Tracy. It's not Jewish at all. They could be Jewish. I don't know.
Could be Jewish.
Could be.
Could be Jewish. So John Mulaney.
A woman named Tracy Jones, who rents out the back party room of the Jones Street Bar and Grill, the place for wings and things, which is like a TGI Fridays or Chili's. And
Red Robin. They had a big back room in the back. Yeah.
Red Robin.
That's what I pictured when I read it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And she's invited every woman in the world named Tracy Jones to this party. And the play starts off an hour into the party and no one showed up. And that play is set to have its world premiere in Michigan at Williamston Theater this past February. It's still on their season, kind of as soon as they open up. So anybody in Michigan, and maybe if they're streaming it at some point, to be aware of that. That's I was supposed to have a few productions of play of mine about the Brontes going on in California last May, and those are indefinitely postponed. So what I would encourage people to do, to go to my website, which is bystephenkaplan.com, by like written by stephenkaplan.com. I always put updates there. I've got a mailing list, and I would love anybody to keep up with the work that I'm doing.
Yeah, I have a reading coming up April 30th of Finding Neil Patrick Harris, and my second reading at Growing Stage in New Jersey of Anne of Green Gables, an adaptation that will be published by Youth Plays after that, I hope. And then, you know, the productions coming up in Ohio and some in Buffalo in 2022.
Right.
But thank you so much, Stephen. The production was wonderful. I hope people all over the country at various JCCs are watching it and you get a lot of views. And thanks, Adam, for hosting us, and have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.